Okay, let's set the scene. It's Jerusalem. July 22nd, 1946. Right around lunchtime, the King David Hotel, a real symbol of British power there, is suddenly hit by this huge explosion.
Yeah, it was devastating. The whole southern wing just pancaked. 91 people killed. Arabs, Britons, Jews, others too. And another 46 injured. It was, the deadliest single attack against the British during the entire mandate period.
And right away, there's this controversy. The Irgun, the paramilitary group, they took responsibility but insisted, hey, we gave clear warnings. But the British, they flatly denied getting any useful warning in time. So the question becomes terrorism or something else, legitimate resistance.
Exactly. And that's what we want to unpack in this deep dive. Give you a kind of shortcut to understanding not just the what, but the why. How this one event became such a flashpoint, maybe even, hasten the end of British rule there, the birth of a new state.
So let's back up a bit. This whole situation in Mandate Palestine was, it was built on a contradiction, wasn't it?
Absolutely. You had the Balfour Declaration back in 1917, this British promise for a Jewish national home. But, and this is the key thing, it was in Palestine, a land already home to a large Arab majority. So tension was baked in from the start.
And then comes 1939, the White Paper. That really poured fuel on the fire.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
It was seen as a stunning reversal by the Jewish community. Britain severely restricted Jewish immigration after the horrors of the Holocaust. Jews desperately needed a safe haven. Britain wouldn't let survivors in. It felt like profound betrayal, and it absolutely fed into the willingness to take up arms against the British.
And within the Jewish community, it wasn't like one unified resistance movement, right? There were different factions.
That's crucial. You had the Haganah, sort of the mainstream group, generally favored self-restraint. Then the Irgun, led by Menachem Begin at the time, much more militant, rejected restraint. And Lehi, sometimes called the Stern Gang, who were the most radical. They often disagreed, but their shared anger at British policy, especially after the White Paper, led them to form this temporary alliance, the Jewish resistance movement, in late 45. That's the immediate context for the bombing.
Okay, so this uneasy alliance exists. What was the specific trigger for the King David attack, spark?
It boils down to something called Operation Agatha, or Black Sabbath as it became known. June 29th, 1946. The British launched this huge crackdown, thousands of soldiers sweeping arrests, trying to crush the resistance.
During that?
This is the critical bit. British soldiers raided the Jewish agency headquarters, that's the main political body, and confiscated boxes of documents. Documents that apparently linked the agency leadership to the insurgency, including the Haganah. And where did they take these documents? To the British Secretariat offices in the King David Hotel.
Wow. So the British themselves basically turned the hotel into the most sensitive target imaginable by putting that intelligence there.
Precisely. Suddenly there's this ticking clock. If those documents were fully analyzed, the Jewish agency's political standing, its legitimacy, could be destroyed. So the Haganah leadership, despite usually being more cautious, felt they had no choice. They actually gave the green light, telling the Irgun, carry out the operation at the Chick was their code name for the hotel. The aim was to destroy those documents.
Right. So fast forward to the attack itself, July 22nd, around 12:30 p.m. How did the Irgun do it?
It was audacious. Irgun operatives disguised themselves as Arab workers delivering milk. They drove a truck right into the service basement near the L'Origines Cafe, which was directly underneath that southern wing, housing the Secretariat. Inside 7 large milk churns. About 350 kilograms, that's, 770 pounds of explosives.
But it didn't go exactly as planned, did it? There was a confrontation.
No, things started to unravel. A British officer, Captain McIntosh, became suspicious of the men unloading the churns. There was a struggle, and tragically, he was shot and killed. This set off an alarm. There was also a small diversionary bomb outside, forcing the Irgun team to light the fuses and make a much hastier escape than they'd intended.
And then, at 12:37 p.m.,
the main charge detonated. The entire southern wing of the hotel just collapsed inwards. A huge cloud of dust and debris.
The human cost you mentioned earlier, it bears repeating.
It really does. 91 dead, 41 Arabs, 28 British personnel, 17 Jewish staff or visitors, and 5 others, plus the 46 injured. The hotel was what you'd call a dual-use target, civilian hotel, yes, but also the nerve center of British administration and military command. A Jewish typist working there, Shoshana Levy-Campos, described it later. Suddenly, everything was black. I started to cry. Just unimaginable terror.
And this is where the story gets even murkier, isn't it? The warnings.
Absolutely. This became the central point of contention, a real war of words. The Irgun always maintained they gave multiple clear telephone warnings about 25-30 minutes beforehand. They said they called the hotel switchboard, the Palestine Post newspaper, and the nearby French consulate. And interestingly, the French consulate did acknowledge receiving a warning and reportedly told staff to open windows to lessen the blast impact.
But the official British line was completely different.
Completely. They denied receiving any warning that was specific enough or delivered in a way that could have possibly allowed for an evacuation. Prime Minister Attlee immediately denounced it in Parliament as a brutal and murderous crime. But maybe even more significant was the reaction from within the Jewish leadership itself. David Ben-Gurion, head of the Jewish Agency, publicly condemned the bombing in the strongest possible terms, calling the Irgun an enemy of the Jewish people.
Wow. So that internal condemnation must have had huge repercussions.
Oh, it shattered that fragile Jewish resistance movement alliance we talked about. The Haganah and the Jewish Agency distanced themselves completely. It allowed the mainstream Zionist leadership to sort of preserve its political legitimacy on the world stage, separate from the Irgun's actions.
And the British, how did they respond on the ground beyond condemnation?
Their immediate military response was Operation Shark. They imposed a curfew, sealed off Tel Aviv for days, conducted house-to-house searches, arrested thousands. But they actually failed to capture Begin, or the core Irgun leadership, who went deeper underground. It mostly just angered the wider Jewish population.
And there was another element too, wasn't there? A major PR issue for the British.
Yes, a really catastrophic own goal. The British military commander, General Sir Evelyn Barker, issued an internal order banning British troops from patronizing Jewish shops, cafes, homes, basically any social contact. He used overtly anti-Semitic language in the order. Somehow, this order was leaked, and the Irgun made sure it was widely publicized. It massively damaged British standing and, frankly, played right into the Irgun's narrative about British prejudice.
So connecting all these threads, what was the long-term strategic impact of the bombing?
Look, it was undeniably a huge blow to British prestige and morale. It starkly demonstrated they couldn't control the situation, couldn't even protect their own headquarters. For many back in the UK, the cost of holding on to Palestine seemed increasingly unbearable. You could argue it was a critical factor, maybe not the only one, but a critical one in eroding British political will. Just 7 months later, in February 1947, Britain announced it was handing the whole Palestine problem over to the newly formed United Nations.
Which led directly to the UN partition plan and ultimately Israel's creation in 1948.
Exactly. The line isn't perfectly straight, but the bombing is a definite, significant milestone on that road.
So we're left with this deeply complex legacy. Terrorism or legitimate resistance. A military target, yes, but with devastating civilian casualties, it's still debated today.
It is. And perhaps the most striking paradox for you to consider is Menachem Begin himself, branded a terrorist leader by the British in 1946 for his role in the Irgun in operations like this. Decades later, he's the democratically elected prime minister of Israel, signing a peace treaty with Egypt and winning the Nobel Peace Prize. It's a stark reminder, isn't it, how history and perspective can shift, how one generation's terrorists, if their side eventually wins, might just become another generation's statesman. The echoes of that King David hotel bombing, well, they certainly haven't faded away.